Trump continues to drive the left crazy, Australia One announces some candidates for the Queensland election, and will Josh Frydenberg's budget take 60 years to pay off? This is The Arc with Riccardo Bosi. Riccardo, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here as usual.
It's been insane this last week. I mean, we were just talking before the camera came on that I think it was 2 weeks ago, Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the US passed away. And Trump's like a black hole. The closer you get sort of to him, it just times just sort of slows down. And I mean, it feels like it was months ago that we were talking about, you know, his nominee and this and that. Did you, I mean, what do you think of the nominee that's just been put forward, Amy Coney Barrett? Because Trump, this is my hypothesis, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. They fell into his trap, and it was hilarious. Amy Coney Barrett is the nominee Trump's put forward. She's a charismatic Catholic. She's a lovely lady, and she's got some sponsor children. And they fell right into his trap because they attacked these, you know, black-looking sponsor children, adopted children, and the media fell exactly into the trap by saying that she's, you know, this, you know, got a white savior complex and this and that, and everyone. Once the heads of the Democratic Party realized what the media were doing and what the radicals were doing, they pulled it back and they said, "Stop attacking her kids. It's bad." And you know, the polls really bared that out. There was what we saw was the Kavanaugh effect, where people started to oppose what was going on. But what did you think about Amy? Have you looked into her?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, yeah, it's been amazing. The news cycle used to be a sort of a 24-hour news cycle. Now it's a minute-by-minute news cycle. If you don't keep up, you're lost.
Yeah.
But his Supreme Court pick, I heard one rumour that he said of her, "We'll save her for when RGB goes." So he's had a list for some time. A smart guy always does. He's got his options ready to go, and he can just squeeze the trigger when he needs to. And he had this one lined up. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I would believe it of the big Don.
Yeah.
He plays several moves ahead, like every good chess master does. But she has a prodigious mind. She is so sharp from her youth all the way through her studies. She was always at the top. She is the master of the brief. I immediately went to her much earlier YouTube videos about her speaking on a range of issues, and if you want to look her up, some of the best ones at Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College in the US is a remarkable school there, university. And she was addressing a range of issues, and this was prior to Trump's election last time, so we're talking October 2016. Before his election, trying to figure out what sort of president he would be, what sort of justices he would select. And she wasn't even on the radar as far as she was concerned. So she gave a very honest opinion of the sorts of justices both Clinton and Trump would select. And now she is one. And I tell you what, she's brilliant, very, very sharp. And she's worked with a number of the big ones. She did some work with Justice Scalia, and she could explain his thinking behind issues. And apart from being an excellent jurist, and she understands, particularly at that high level, how the Constitution can be interpreted and how it might be interpreted, and her opinion of how it possibly should be interpreted. So she understood it, and she explained Scalia, for example, where he came down on a decision that he found personally egregious, which was the First Amendment interpretation of burning the US flag. Now, he found that act abominable, but he agreed with the legal case that this is a form of expression, freedom of speech, and so he came down on the side of the law despite his personal feelings. And I think she's exactly the same. She understands, while she has very strong feelings and a very deep, a deep belief in God, she understands that her role as a Supreme Court justice will require her at times to come down on the side of the law, regardless of her personal feelings, as opposed to faith. Faith is a different matter, but she's not informed by it, which is unique to the conservative side of politics, because the left will justify anything. They have no principles. They don't believe in anything. They are the masters of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And they'll say and do whatever will get the next 10 seconds worth of airtime.
There's no limiting factor. That means that radicalism has no bounds.
That's it. There's no point at which you can ramp a leftist back. The conservatives, we hold ourselves back because we know there's a right and wrong, that we know that there is a line that is too far, and we don't cross that line.
Yeah.
But they just go nuts. So they'll put their lunatic leftist judges on the Supreme Court who are like trained monkeys who will do exactly what they're told to do. But the Conservatives actually have this sense of right and wrong, and they'll apply to it. But anyway, in summary, fantastic pick. I hope she gets up fast. She's young, she's smart, she's done everything. 7 kids, 2 adopted. Phenomenal, as I said, prodigious mind, brilliant jurist. So the US is blessed to have someone of that calibre potentially on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, a lot of the Conservatives have been, they've got a bit of PTSD from nominating other conservative justices, or so-called conservative justices. It's sad it's become a partisan thing. It should be the law's the law and you bring your principles to it. But it's become Republican, Democrat. And a lot of the former conservative ones that have been just unreliable. They've been so unreliable on some things like Roe v. Wade and other issues. There's been a lot of angst to pick the right one. Now, Justice Scalia, before I think he passed away, he was a very solid justice, and you knew he was a conservative. You knew how he was going to rule because he was like a book, you know. But you get some justices, they come through, and you have no idea how they're going to vote, and they vote completely the opposite way on fundamental issues. Now, with her, she, as you said, she studied under Justice Scalia and worked under him, and so it was like, okay, she's solid, she's good, she's fine, no worries. I think there was another justice that also worked under Justice Scalia, and they appointed them as well because they knew they were solid. But maybe I'm confusing myself with Amy. But we think that she will overturn Roe v. Wade in a Roe v. Wade situation, that if it were to be challenged. But I heard some, you guys need to verify this, but I heard some stuff from, I think it's Tim Pool's show. He was saying that she subscribes to a certain point of view in the legal sort of profession, a sort of school of thought, which means they won't overturn some significant rulings. Now, I'm not sure if that would apply to this, but a lot of lefties are really worried. That's their biggest thing. They're saying, oh, she's going to, overturn Roe v. Wade and stop us from killing kids. And so look, we'll see what happens with that one.
That's an interesting one because the left will always ratchet it to the left, but they'll never relent. And that's their tactic, and then it works for them. But what they don't realise is that a law is a law. It's a man-made law. It didn't come down in tablets of stone carried by Moses, and every law can be changed. And I found this out. Well, I helped a woman understand this once after the gay marriage vote, and I was wearing a T-shirt that said it's okay to say no. And she approached me and she said, look, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but your T-shirt might be offensive to people. The law has been passed. You should be more concerned about the well-being of the gay community. And I thanked her for her courage in approaching me directly rather than just whispering behind her hand. And I explained to the woman that a law is a law. It doesn't matter. It can be changed, and the gay marriage law can be changed. And the look of horror on her face, and she realised. And I said, look, we change governments, we change directions, we can overturn bad laws, we can overturn good laws, but laws are there to be overturned. And she walked away stunned.
We
in
the people,
silence.
right? That's where the power comes from.
That's exactly, it's the people, it's not the government. But anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, look, RGB passing away was a massive moment 2 weeks ago, but since then we've had a bunch of other things that have happened. I mean, last week we talked about the disastrous debate, which didn't change anyone's mind between Trump and Biden last week. And right after that, it turns out that they didn't follow protocol at the debate. They were rushing and they didn't test the candidates for coronavirus. And as a result, Trump ended up getting COVID-19. And in the same, I think in 3 days, he ended up beating it with he was on some steroid that they gave him. And Trump, he just came out this morning. And he announced that he's going to be making the drug that really helped him free for all Americans. Now, look, there's a lot of Bernie Sanders voters that are going to love that. They're going to love that. I mean, Medicare for all, having access to some sort of solution is amazing. But I want to challenge Riccardo. Not really. I want to challenge these people, Riccardo. A lot of the anti-vaxxers, because if Trump comes out and he says this is the vaccine I'm endorsing, I suspect a lot of lefties are going to become the new anti-vaxxers. and it's going to be...
You're probably right.
Can you imagine if they found the cure for COVID-19 in Trump? He had the antibodies, like they would have been... And then he would have forced a vaccine on them. I think a lot of them would be, a lot of them would be really anti-vaxxers after that.
I think you're right, because their obsession and hatred of him is so great. If he said that black was black, they'd say it was white.
Exactly.
And so I think you're right on that. I think they would.
Yeah.
But whether he actually had COVID or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a special operator coming out at me. I'm constantly looking for the story
behind
the story.
You don't trust anything.
So I don't trust anybody or anything. Who am I? Check myself. I don't know. What I do know is even before all this took off, very beginning, before COVID was even in the public consciousness, and it first reared its ugly head, I checked with some medical professionals. They explained that the coronavirus itself has been around forever. You can see coronavirus written on antiseptic spray cans and things like that, so it's not unusual, the alleged virus. But they said, look, whatever it is, the reason it lives in the nasal cavity is because that's the coolest part of the body, because you're constantly breathing in cool air. So if you're feeling crook, they said, look, just hop in the shower every hour, go in for 10 minutes and just breathe in through your nose. It'll kill the bug, because it is very fragile and it cannot stand heat. So that's it. That's what they told me to do. Okay, great, we did that. And so there's been all this lie, this COVID nonsense. And even my daughters are saying, Dad, when is the COVID nonsense going to finish so we can get back to a normal life? So even they know it's rubbish. But what Trump did was, whether it was real or not, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. But the fact is that if he gives free the solution that he took, how can you argue with that?
Yeah, I really think it actually happened, because what happened after that, in the 24 hours once he got back from the hospital, he arrived back triumphantly. He arrived in his helicopter. He said, everyone, don't worry about the COVID-19. It's fine. I beat it. You guys can beat it. We're strong. We've got the best medical people. We're going to smash this. And I'm going to give you guys all the drug to help you out with it. And it's going to be free. Like, that's all. That's a pitch. And what was the reaction from the left? They said he took his mask off. He's endangering people. He shouldn't debate Biden. They don't want him in the ring with Biden again, even though the debate's in 8 days from now. And his medical doctor has cleared him of all COVID-19 symptoms.
Yeah, but we know why they don't want him to debate
Exactly.
Biden, because the meds are going to run out.
Yeah, exactly. The meds are going to run out. So, look, it's going to be very fascinating to see how this COVID-19 thing pans out. But what I think was genuine about it was, once he got out, I think he genuinely was, I don't know how long it was, but I think he was fearful when he was in there a little bit. Because what happened when he came out, within 24 hours of coming out, he comes out and says, I'm declassifying all the Hillary Clinton email stuff. This is taking too long. I want to see all the ObamaGate documents that are coming out. And there was a Department of Justice announcement this morning at the crack of dawn, 2 a.m. Australia time. I couldn't sleep. I needed to know what this was about. Who were they indicting? False alarm guys. It ended up being 2 ISIS people that were beheading people in Syria. And look, that's terrible. Wasn't what I was expecting. We all wanted to hear some heads roll with ObamaGate. But that announcement just shows me that he is in a rush. He wants to find out what's going on. If there were things if he were to pass away and there were things that were dead in the water, the ObamaGate stuff never came out, the origins of the Russiagate investigation never came out, the Durham investigation never showed its findings, because someone kills it, like if a new president got elected and they killed it, what would happen?
And that's a really good point, because I get a lot of calls from a lot of people. I've mentioned it before, and they're telling me that Trump is going to save the world. Trump is going to save the world. Well, we can't wait for Trump to save the world. We have to save Australia,
exactly,
and let the other countries save themselves. And if we sit here and wait, we're on a hiding to nothing. We're going to lose badly.
Exactly.
We have to save ourselves, and that's what A1 is pushing all the time. And my people are saying, we need to protest this, we need to challenge that. And I say, no, we need to build a party. Because when the collapse comes, and it will, we need a functioning organisation that can absorb all these people, corral them, marshal all of their energy, and then take the governments at the federal and state level. Now, I know that's not exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But neither is building a boat.
Exactly.
But when the flood comes, where do you want to be? You want to be in a boat with solid gunnels, a good keel, and plenty of room for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what we're building. So it's fascinating what's happening in the US. I certainly hope big things come out.
Yeah.
But once again, we can look after ourselves.
Yeah.
Nobody else will.
So that comes back to building the ark, because it's really, I've been thinking a lot about the the arc that you're building, being Australia One, it's very much reversing the long march to the institutions, because what it is it's rebuilding in some form or loose form a community, which is something that's been under assault. You know, before we had all these charities, what did we have? We had churches, we had synagogues, we had mosques, and that would be where a lot of charity would go through, and people would give loans through and help their community out, and people would be bound to, you know, supporting each other. Now, when it comes to A1, that is sort of a similar thing. It's not a charity, but it's working together to build something and to really turn the country around. And what I see is a well-organised left side of our country that's just run this place into the ground. It's just a well-organised 5-10% of people, and they tend to be hyper, influential in positions of the government, in position, whether they're judges, whether they're politicians, the media. That's what we need on the right. We need a well-organised mechanism to do this. And I think it was Alan Jones that said this. Once the bear wakes up, we're talking like 60 to 80% of people in Australia, you know, they're very fed up with this stuff, but they don't have a mechanism to do it. So of course, if they don't know the rules and they don't know how to rally, and they don't know how their political system works, they're not going to be able to play the game. So that brings us to this week, which has been very exciting. And as soon as I saw the news, I pumped it out everywhere on my social media, and people love this news. So this week, Riccardo and A1 announced some new candidates for the Queensland election, which is really exciting. It's on October 31st, I think, in Queensland. Did you want to introduce some of the candidates for the areas and all of that?
Sure. Well, we went through a process, and we resisted those that, excuse me, who threw their hand up saying, look, I've been a candidate 53 times before, I know all about politics, let me run. And we weren't so keen on those people. What we wanted is, we didn't want professional politicians. We wanted good, decent business people, whatever, policemen, cab drivers, didn't matter. Yep. But we wanted people who had roots in the community, who were keen on doing something for the country but didn't know exactly how or what they could do. And so we tested a whole bunch of candidates. We were going to have 3. The last one I rejected at this election. She's going to be fantastic at the next one. She just wasn't ready for the brutality of the fight, because we went through some Q&A, and it starts gentle, but then it gets progressively robust, and you can see that she wasn't quite ready. But the good news is there are 2 candidates running in this election, and it's a good military principle. You focus all your resources on a single point of attack, and then you break through. So we've got 2 candidates. There's Tracy in Currumbin, which is the Gold Coast, just inland, and it's right on the New South Wales-Queensland border. So they're suffering because the New South Wales-Queensland border is where a lot of cross-border work done. They basically, as far as they're concerned, their businesses cross the border. And so they're suffering under COVID, the COVID lockdown that Palace Chook is implementing. But she's a solid individual. She's worried about her kids and her future. She had a good business with her husband. They're working hard. They're taking the month off. The business is in the hands of the employees while they focus like a laser on this seat of Currumbin in southeast Queensland. So she's solid, and she's up and running, and she's going. The second candidate is me, and I'm running in a seat called Nicklin. So you've got Currumbin south of Brisbane, and Nicklin is north of Brisbane. So I'll be running up there. So we're covering both of the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, and I'll be running in Nicklin there. It's really exciting, and the reason I'm running is you got to lead from the front by example.
That's right.
It's easy to sit back.
That's right.
And just direct the troops and watch them run into the machine gun nest and get mowed down. But you've got to be there yourself. You've got to lead from the front. And so I'm running in Nicklin, and you asked me before the show, how do I think we're going to go? We're going to win.
Awesome.
We will win. We'll have at least 1, possibly 2. And this is the beginning of the end of the political class in Australia at the highest level. Because they're terrified. They are absolutely terrified, because it's a game they play between Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens. It's a game. It's a uni-party organisation. I was told, I was told by a well-connected individual, and they're going to hate me for saying it, but hey, it's the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But the LNP is going to run dead in Queensland because the agreement's been made. Labor's going to win.
Is that right?
Yeah, they don't care. They're not actually trying. Because they know the people actually run the country, to use John Howard's famous words. the people who actually run the country, know they can achieve more faster with the Labor Party than they can with the Liberal Party, Liberal National. They're both the same. None of them believe in anything. And if you ask them to describe in a short, sharp explanation of what they want to create for Australia, they can't tell you because they don't have a plan. We do. People ask me all the time, well, what do you stand for? And it's very easy. Excuse me. We want to create a sovereign, self-reliant, and they're the first two categories. Sovereign, self-reliant, Christian, Western democracy, which is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. So every policy we get asked about, what's your policy on this? If it contributes to any of that, it's in. And if it diverges to the least degree away from that, then we don't do it. Let me give you an example. Sovereign, the very first one. We're a sovereign nation. The UN, gone. Because the current government is signing us up to a bunch of nonsense because we're signed up to the UN. Well, we're not interested in being part of the UN. We'll sensibly we'll play the game in terms of cooperation internationally with business and bank transfers and the mechanics of things that need to be done. But we're going to be a sovereign nation. We're going to do the same thing for Queensland when we get in there. We're going to return the sovereignty of that state of Queensland to the Queenslanders and take it away from everybody else. So, good candidate in Tracy. I'm running as well. We anticipate, and I was advised again, that there will probably be a string of by-elections coming up, and we're going to focus, we're going to, like a lily pond, we're going to jump from pad to pad to pad, and we'll be competing. So all you A1 supporters out there, of which there are thousands, thank you for that. Get yourselves ready. Prepare for the job if you want it, because when there's a by-election in your state or federal electorate, be ready for the task. And it's a tough one, so read the policies, make sure you can fight for them, and get yourselves ready. But Queensland's going to be a lot of fun. I
can't wait. I was with you a few months ago, I think it was in July, for the Eden Monaro election, or was that June? And people don't get it. We're not going away because these issues aren't going away. And until you address the issues properly, we're not going to just stop. This party is not made or broken at one election. And people can't get through that through their thick skulls. These elites of this country that have run the country into the ground, if I can see it 23 years of age, then trust me, everyone else can see it. So, look, I don't know a thing about Queensland except the lovely views, lovely places like Fraser Island, and, Cairns gets a little bit hot. That's the extent of my knowledge. What's happening there? What sort of policies are you guys running on? What do people want to hear about? Well,
Queensland's a great state with tremendous potential, and it used to be the place to go to. But as usual, the political class gets in and destroys it. Tourism's obviously big. It's got a lot of potential that has been squashed, and we're going to open that up. And let me just run through very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Just a few things. Excuse me. Because make sure we get this covered. Now, first up, the state economy. The Treasurer of Queensland announced it'll be $100 billion in debt by 2021. When did any government anywhere ever actually fix the problem? They tax more and more and more, and yet we're going further into debt.
Oh my God.
Every state and federal government has done that, so it's time to sack them.
Yeah.
Just sack them. Get rid of them. This is insane. The people who created the problem are telling us to trust them to fix the problem. And there is no evidence anywhere that they can do it. $100 billion for the state, where it should be in the black.
How much is that? I can't conceptualize a trillion.
Well, that's the trouble. A billion here and a billion there, and eventually you'll start talking about serious money.
Yeah.
But it's nonsense because it's just a burden that they don't care about.
How much does a nuclear power station cost?
Not much.
Is it like
$3 billion?
3 billion, yeah, 4 billion.
Yep.
Far out, man. You're kidding. So you could, oh my gosh. Okay.
You could save Australia, save the states. They don't want to. It's not because they're incompetent. They actually don't want to. The plan, and we'll talk about this next week, the new international economic order and why Australia's in the hole that it's in. It's all part of a plan.
Yeah.
It's been known about for 50 years at least, and it's a government document, so this isn't tinfoil hat territory. I can give you the names of the Liberal and Labor members of Parliament on the committee.
Yeah.
But this was the plan to destroy the nation. So anyway, the economy. So how are we going to fix the economy? Open the state. We're going to open it up immediately. We will press for the COVID lockdowns to be thrown out immediately. Open it up, because there is no threat to the country. There has never been any threat. And if you're interested in it, there is a German lawyer And I wrote down his name, and unfortunately I forgot it, but you can check it out. Now, this German lawyer is pulling together a series of other lawyers, and they're going to look at the COVID response by governments. Now, this lawyer investigated the formerly fantastic and proud Deutsche Bank. And then they, as a result of their investigation, they made sure they found out the truth, and they found out that Deutsche Bank was a criminal cartel. He also was part of the legal team that investigated VW for their the dodgy shenanigans that were going on with their emissions. So this guy has played at the top level. He knows exactly what's going on. And he and his team of lawyers are now investigating COVID. And he has made it abundantly clear that we have been lied to systematically, intentionally, and those that are guilty of it, I can promise you this, if they did it in Queensland, they'll spend the rest of their lives in jail, and if they did it federally, same thing. So down the track. So watch this space, Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg and the rest of you. If you are guilty of deceiving the Australian people for somebody else's profit, there will be a reckoning. So we're going to open up the state immediately, as quickly as we can. Taxes. We're going to wipe the state taxes out. Just remove them immediately. Payroll tax, land tax, stamp duty, all the nonsense taxes that are regressive, that kill innovation and business building. And the reason for that is because we need to build up the SMEs again. Give them a massive tax break. Get back to work fast. Because these lunatics that created the problem are going to tell us it's going to take us decades to get out of debt. Well, it won't take decades to get out of debt if they just take the leash off the business people and let it do it. And we've spoken about this before. It's easy to earn a living. You go to work, you do what you're told, you create something of value, you get paid. Everybody can do that. But creating wealth, that's very special, and that's tough. And you only need three things. You need leadership, capital, and labour. Now, there's no shortage of good, hard-working Australians that are looking for a good job that pays well. There's no shortage of entrepreneurs. The leadership to create something out of nothing. And that's hard yakka, let me tell you, I've done it. It's hard work. What we're missing... What are we missing? We're missing the capital. Why? Because nobody's got the spare capital, because the government is ripping it out of your pockets and making it impossible to get your business off the ground. So all those, as many state taxes as we can physically rip out, we will. We will not pass a bill that will increase tax, and we'll only pass those that remove the tax. And people will squeal and say, oh my God, but how can you survive? We need the money. Yeah, we do need the money, but just make a bigger cake. Stop trying to divide the cupcake amongst 15 people. How about we make a 17-layer wedding cake, and there's plenty of cake for everybody. So that's how we're going to do it on the tax side.
And there's credibility to that, because I think in Trump's first 500 days, he promised for every one legislation, he'd get rid of 2. He got rid of 23 in keeping with his promise. So for every one piece of legislation in his first 500 days, he got rid of 23. And look at their economy after that. Record low unemployment, 9 million people off food stamps. Lowest black, Hispanic, women's unemployment, historic lows. I think it could be done, but it does come back to leadership and managing that capital.
And just give it back to the people. They know better. There's an old story. The government couldn't build a pencil. Think about what's required to build a pencil. You need wood, but you need the right wood. Then you've got to chop the wood down. Then you've got to move the wood down to a mill. Then it's got to be milled the right way. Then it's got to be shaped the right way. Then you need the graphite. Then you put it... But they couldn't do that, and they can't do it. Government, as my bride says quite often, government doesn't make money. It just takes your money and spends it. So give them as little as possible. So
I think it was Thomas Sowell who said if you put the government in charge of a beach, they'd run out of sand.
And water.
And
they're bloody hopeless.
What's next?
What else? Health. Here's one for Queensland. Queensland has a vibrant potential for natural health remedies. Right? They call it Big Pharma calls it alternative. No, Big Pharmaceuticals is alternative. They're invasive. They're destructive. They're the ones producing medicines that kill. And so we're going to investigate. We want to push Queensland to be the centre for natural health remedies and all sorts of things. And a big one, for example, and this has a personal note for me, cannabis oil. And it doesn't contain the THC, which gives you the psycho effects that people want to smoke it for, because you've got to heat up the THC and that gives you the high. We're not talking about this. The human body has more receptors for the essence of the cannabis oil in terms of maintaining health. And people don't know, this is an Israeli study a few years back. And what they found is that cannabis oil, and again, just to be clear, it's not the THC, is massively correlated to reducing inflammation of every system in the body. And so what we want to do is make sure that this is investigated correctly, and then made available as quickly as possible to as many people as possible to fight back against the assault against natural health that we suffer every day just by being in a Western society.
Yeah.
You know, our diets are too acidic. Inflammation is a major problem just because of the food we eat and insecticides and pesticides and things like that.
Yeah.
But Queensland could be the world centre for natural health. We're going to investigate it. We're going to make sure that people get healthy rather than supporting big pharma and their untested drugs.
Yeah.
So that's another area that we're going to look at.
So, sorry, is that something that's currently illegal to look
No.
into?
It's been made legal in Australia.
Okay.
But once again, big pharma is more powerful than an actual solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, what is a pharmaceutical company, what's their prime motivation?
Profits.
To cure people? No, of course not. They need sick people.
Exactly.
And that's why, once again, no vaccine has ever undergone a double-blind test.
Yeah, 'cause
the gold standard for testing, never once.
Yeah.
And viruses, even the theory of virus is unsound, according to them. The idea is everyone's taught, if you get the bug, the antibodies will, the system will attack the bug, you get the antibodies, then you're immune.
Yeah.
Really? Well, what the little picture of that, what they call is the coronavirus, is actually called an exome. An exome is just an excretion from a cell that's under attack. Because they never caught a live virus, because there is no such thing as a live virus. It is this picture is a picture of essentially shit out of a cell. It's an exome. And they take that, and it looks like a deadly disease. But it's a string of RNA, and if you don't understand that, that's fine, but look it up yourself. It's a string of RNA. And it can be associated with multiple origins, and so we've got this little string of RNA that they pick up and they say, well, you've got coronavirus. Well, you don't.
Yeah.
If you've had the flu, you've got this.
Yeah.
So it's all a lie, and we've been lied to, and either our governments are complicit or stupid, because there's only one or two possible explanations. Maybe a third, maybe they're corrupt.
Yeah.
Maybe they know exactly what they're doing, and they are intentionally destroying the lives and livelihoods of 25 million people, which is why I said earlier, and it may have seemed a little over the top, but they will spend the rest of their lives in jail.
I honestly think they're that stupid, guys. I really do. Go on. What's next?
Good luck.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one, and this is a big one, because it's going to benefit not only Queensland, but New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia.
Yep.
And this is the Bradfield Scheme. Now, we've spoken about this before, and it's been revised since, and it's been raised by many people. It's been sitting there for decades. I first spoke of it, I guess, a few years back now, and now it's starting to get some currency. But the Bradfield Scheme, the Queenslanders know all about it. You start it way up at Tully.
Yep.
And that's way in the tropics, and there's the tonnage of water that lands every hour up there during the wet is incredible. And we used to train up there in the jungles of Tully when I was in the Defence Force. Great place up there. You dam the rivers, a sequence of dams, the Hell's Gate Dam all the way down, and what you can do with that, and this is an environmental policy, we can turn that dust bowl around Charters Towers, which is large and flat and brown, and I've been there, we can turn this into the breadbasket of the world. This can be the land of milk and honey. We can irrigate, and we create more arable land all the way through Queensland. So instead of having this thin strip on the coast, which is green, and then have this terrible brown centre, no, we can green the whole lot. And so the dams are built.
Yeah.
We channel the water. We irrigate the land.
Yeah.
We can put hydro stations all the way along the canals or the pipes, and even underground to reduce evaporation. You put in these small hydro turbine power generators, and they're only about 1.5 meters in diameter, and that'll generate enough power for a township of 2,000. So you've got hydropower all the way down from Tully in the north, way down to the border with New South Wales. And if you wanted to, it can continue down and plug into the Murray-Darling Basin. To fix the problem there, which is again not a problem of the environment, it's a problem of the illegal, unconstitutional water sales that have been done. We've spoken about that before as well. And there's still going to be enough water to then tap into Victoria and then into all the way down to the Coorong in South Australia, so the boaties have got water to sail their yachts. So everybody wins.
Wow.
And this is a massive infrastructure project that's going to save the east coast of Australia. So that big brown slab after the Blue Mountains, that can all be green.
Wow.
And so we've got big plans for Queensland.
Yeah.
Both federal type issues, state issues and local issues. It's going to be fantastic. Finally, the people will be free, they'll be let off the leash, and they'll be free to create what they can create for themselves and contribute to our nation.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds too good to be true, but when I hear the people that have been on board with that historically, what do I think? I think it's people with significant testicular fortitude. And they don't have to be guys, intestinal fortitude. People like Kerry Packer, people like, Alan Jones, who's done, he's got his flaws, don't get me wrong. But my God, he's got fortitude in a lot of these issues. And he's given, the working man a voice quite often. On this issue, they all agree. I don't know why this hasn't happened. And it's just, they packaged it up. It's ready to go. They've thought through it. How is it like, it's still not done?
I can answer that if you want.
Please.
The new International Economic Order, 1980, February. There's a Senate report on the new International Economic Order, implications for Australia. It's a formal government document. And we'll talk about it more about this next week, because we need to get into it so people understand why we are in a hole. And that's a great question. Why hasn't it been done? Because the intention of the new International Economic Order and our role in it was to strip Australia of its manufacturing and primary production capacity. Strip it. That's it. Dismantle it. And so plans like this, which would grow our economy, make us more prosperous, make us wealthier, were intentionally stymied in order to prevent us from growing. And every government since 1980, so pick your favourite Prime Minister, every government, every leader of the opposition, they all knew about this and they all backed it. Every one. There isn't one that gets off scot-free. Every senator, every MP. They have been intentionally destroying this nation day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year for at least since 1980 that we can prove. And if we get our hands on the documents that go before that, we'll raise that as well. But that's why none of this has taken place. And we keep electing these imbeciles to government, believing they're going to make a difference next time. Well, they're not. And let me make a point here for the Queenslanders. In the seats of Nicklin and Currumbin, you vote one for us or don't bother voting at all, because second and third preferences won't get us over the line. And there's a couple of reasons for that. There's the mechanics of how elections run and preferences, and you've got to get 50% of the vote plus one and you're in. The preferences don't matter after that. But if nobody gets 50% plus one, you go to preferences. Liberal Labor are going to play a game here. Yeah. So the win has to be so overwhelming, so convincing that we get 50% plus one vote and we're in. The second point is the Chinese Communist Party is involved, as I've mentioned previously, they're involved in the count. Now, why would you give the CCP, a known criminal cartel that has destroyed the world, a role at all, unless you were, again, an imbecile or stupid or corrupt? Premier Palace Chook. I'm not sure which one you are, miss, but you're one of the three. And the people of Queensland know it, and they're going to speak on the 31st, and you can do what the hell you like, but you will lose. We have to, every decent Queenslander has to descend on Nicklin and has to descend on Currumbin, help handing out how to vote cards, and leading up to the election, find as much information they can on social media and spread the word, because we need to win those two seats. Because if we don't, this is the last election before the Great Reset kicks off in January next year. And if we don't have anybody in Parliament, because all you've got at the moment are the Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens, and you're going to get more of the same. This is your last chance. This is the last throw of the dice, folks. You either get us into Queensland or you might as well just give up now, because there are no elections after that. And we'll talk next week on I'll just highlight it now for you, because if you're not scared yet, you will be shortly. Next week, we're going to talk about Defence Legislation Amendment, brackets, Enhancement of Defence Force Response to Emergencies Bill 2020. And the short version is, this piece of legislation provides immunity for foreign militaries and foreign police forces to conduct operations on you and your kids. Wow. Now, this is coming out of Scott Morrison's office. So do you trust Scotty from marketing, the man with no qualifications for the job, or his treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, again, a man with no qualifications for the job? Do you trust these people to pass legislation on your behalf? Don't trust them. I don't. You've got to get it. Spread the word in Queensland. If you live in Nicklin, if you live in Currumbin, vote one for myself in Nicklin and for Tracy in Currumbin. And if you're in the southeast corner of Queensland, get down there and help to hand out how to votes. Spread the word online in the next 2.5 weeks. There's not much time left, but social media is powerful. Get the word out and research me, research Tracy, and if you like us, spread the word, because this is the last throw of the dice. It's all on this. And it's not just about Queensland. This is for every other state, because down in Victoria and down in WA, and again, we'll talk about this in more detail. I wanted to mention it this week, but we haven't got time. But in WA, they already have legislation where the police are authorised to hold you down and inject you with a vaccine. It's law. And if you don't believe me, go look it up. Now, if you want your kids held down, you want your kids taken away from you because you haven't vaccinated them yet, just relax. Just keep doing what you're doing, folks. But if you have the least bit respect for the future of your kids and Australia, I mean it. Do your research and find it out. Tune in next week. We'll give you more detail on those stories. But we're in a bad place. Australia has to wake up. You will run out of time. And I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit animated here, but I am tired of people saying she'll be right. Let me tell you about the origin of the expression she'll be right. Back in Tobruk in World War II, the Australians and amongst the other allies, the Brits, were cornered in the town of Tobruk, and they held out against Rommel. And the term rats of Tobruk was coined by the Germans as an insult because they lived in the little holes underground. Well, the Australians and the Brits held out against ferocious odds against Rommel's vaunted Africa Corps, and they held out. And I heard this from the son of one of the Brits that fought there, and who came out to Australia after the war, and he said, I couldn't believe the Australians. It didn't matter how bad it got. They said, she'll be right, we'll take care of it. But it wasn't a sit back and do nothing, she'll be right. It was, she'll be right, we're going to make this work, we're going to fight and we're going to win. That's the she'll be right we want, not the one that says, oh no, she'll be right, I'll do nothing and it'll all be okay. It won't be. They will come for your kids, they will come for you, they will take your kids from you, they'll forcibly inject you. Now, that's not political freedom. That's not the Australia that I spent a quarter of a century of my life trying to defend. Well, wasn't I just a schmuck?
Yeah.
Well, it's time we all stood up. Australians have got to wake up. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's all out there. If they're too bloody lazy to do the research, just take the internet, the greatest gift to humanity, knowledge of an entire civilization online when you want it. And what do people look at? Porn and social media. Well, how about you get off the porn and the pictures of your avocado salad, do some research, you'll be horrified, I promise you, but get through the 5 stages of grief as quick as you can. Do your research and find out what's going on. And once you understand it, spread the word, and you've got to back me and Nicklin and back Tracy and Currumbin, get us into the Queensland Parliament, because we are a voice, not just for Queensland, but this is the tip of the spear for the rest of Australia. Then we do the same in every other state, and it's for you.
The scariest thing I realised in my life was that my actions actually matter. I can make a difference. Because once you realise that the price of inaction is devastating. I've got a niece. She's 2 years old right now. She's a lovely girl. And this leads into Josh Frydenberg and his budget. Apparently, in 2080, we would have finished paying off the debt according to their projections. 2080. My niece will be 62. Now, I'm not going to be the one that gets animated in this interview, but my gosh, do I feel invested in this. You know, Riccardo, you've probably got 40, 50 years in your life, God willing. But I am going to be stuck with this for a very long time. And I take it very personally when the government says, here is a situation where you're going to be saddled with debt for 60 years. That's a person's life. That's insane. And in the budget, guys, the information's all there. We're presenting it to you. 80 million vaccines have been secured. That's what Josh Frydenberg said, our treasurer, in his budget. 80 million vaccines. It's all there. And then these governments come out, these state governments come out with this legislation, and they're suggesting legislation to hold people down. At what point do you lose your crap and say, enough, we need to stand up? And I'm not advocating violence, at least not yet. I don't want to go get violent. But when it comes to these elections, that is your vote is your only weapon right now if you rule out violence. And if you can't do that, then maybe we do deserve to lose the country, but not yet. Now, we've got to be like the Australians of Tobruk. In fact, they fought so hard that Rommel said after that, He said, if I were to take hell, I would use the Australians to take it and the New Zealanders to hold it. Now, if the Desert Fox, one of the, Germany's most renowned generals in the First World War, is saying that about Australians, then what does it say about us today? We're so willing to give up the freedoms they died for. It's very enraging. And coming back to this budget, it's not something that we can just let go. I briefly want to say this on the budget. So I looked through it last night. There was a great guy I've been listening to online who covers Australian politics. He's a libertarian. He hates government debt, government control, so we've got a lot in common, me being a conservative. And he basically said, if you look at the report, this guy, he's great. He read through the whole thing. I don't have time to read through it, nor do you guys. But this is the thing that stood out to me. If you look through the report, and the projection is 60 years to pay off this debt, that projection is an optimistic view. That is assuming we don't have a COVID-19 situation again. That is assuming we don't saddle ourselves with more debt again. And I don't believe that, because I think we're going to get, if we get this is a liberal government we're getting all this debt from. What are the odds we're not going to have another crisis in the future? We're setting a precedent. If other governments in the future see that this is how you deal with, they take the book off the shelf and they say, this is how we deal with the COVID-19 crisis. We saddle ourselves with debt because it worked before. There's precedent for it. Have to do it again. Of course it's going to happen again. If we say this is fine and we let this go. You have no idea how angry I was last night. I was swearing watching this video of this guy. I even posted it. I said, please, someone tell me this guy's lying to me. Tell me he's not telling the truth, that I'm going to be paying this debt off for 60 plus years. But it's true if you do nothing. And thank God we've got Australia One and other parties to put our votes into, because I don't want the slow deterioration of the Liberal Party. I don't want the quick deterioration from the Labor Party. You got to stand up now. I can't help you guys. I can't help you. This is the information. We've made it easy for you. We've given you some leads. You have the bloody internet to look all this stuff up on. You need to get to action. What does that mean? That means voting Australia One, spreading these videos online, talking to people in Queensland, canvassing, going and talking door to door to people, telling them about Australia One, showing them a video on your phone about Riccardo, talking about these issues. I clip them up for you. I make it nice and easy for you. That means getting active and handing out how to vote ballots. Voting Australia One at the top of the ballot, not at the end, because you want Liberal you don't want Liberal to be hurt. Okay? We've got the most robust preference system in the world. You can put Australia One and put Liberal before Labor, okay? And it still matters. It just blows my mind how people don't know their electoral system. And then they look around flabbergasted and say, how did things get so bad? It's like, what did you think happened? But what did you think about the budget? Because I had a look through it and it looked concerning, as I just demonstrated.
Oh, it's a shocker, and it's insane that they've actually put it out as they have. They are so pathetic. Frydenberg, again, he has no qualifications for this job. Frydenberg, the alleged treasurer of this country, the guy spent 2.5 minutes in a law firm, 3.5 minutes with Deutsche Bank, and the rest of the time he's been advisor to Liberal people. That's it. That's his. So he knows politics. He knows nothing about governance. He knows nothing about leadership. He knows nothing about finance. He knows nothing about wealth creation. The man knows nothing about nothing. And in fact, good old Josh, little Joshy Frydenberg, famously called Trump a dropkick in 2015. Well, Josh, mate, I know one of you can build an economy, and I know the other one can't. So who's the dropkick? Josh. So this insult to the Australian people by the imbecile Josh Frydenberg, the man not qualified to feed cats in a cattery, is telling us that we have to pay a debt for 60 years. I can guarantee you this, good old Josh's family's fine. I bet you Scott Morrison's family's fine. And the rest of us have to pay.
Yep.
Well, it's about time the Australian people told Josh and Scott and all the premiers to get stuffed. And I mean it. This is enough. We don't have another chance after this. And if you think I'm being unfair on little Joshy Frydenberg, the dropkick, this is the same man who has said nothing about the 90-year suppression order for VIP pedophiles like Scott Morrison. So once again, folks, How can you trust a party or parties, and that's Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens, how can you trust these people to look after you if they are knowingly concealing and protecting pedophiles, judges who used to frequent the Costello boy brothel in King's Cross? They will say nothing about that, but they want you to believe them. No more, folks. It's done. The four major parties need to be punted. Absolutely punted, and the best way you can do it, because there's only one election coming up in the next before January, that's Queensland. So Queenslanders, do it for yourselves, do it for your state, and do it for the country. Because if myself and Tracy get in, and when we get in, and we will, watch this space. That's the chink in the armour. That's the flood. That's Normandy. We get onto the beaches in Normandy, we're going straight to Berlin, and we'll continue going straight through to Moscow as well. We're not stopping. Okay. This is serious. I've never been more serious, folks. This is the end. Either you wake up and you vote the right way, or you might as well give the whole thing away.
All right, let's bring this back. Because there are plenty of shows online where you can see people get angry and throw their arms in the air and say, you need to do this, do that. But let's give them some solutions. We've talked about this in the past, the debt. We can sit here and criticise Josh Frydenberg all day and say he's wrong. We've got a situation where we've got to take it as it is, just like you would in the military. It's a crap situation. How would you solve the economy in this situation? If you were Josh Frydenberg and you had to give, if you were the Treasurer of Australia and you had to give that speech, what sort of policies would you
thank you for asking that.
To get them out? Because that's what we've got. That's important. We've got to talk solutions.
And this wasn't set up beforehand. We didn't prepare this, but thank you for asking.
No, you're right.
First thing I'd do is I'd call up China and say, we owe you a lot of money. But we're now facing this situation of force majeure. Inexplicable, can't do it, can't pay. So we're going to set your debts to one side. We're not going to pay you back for the time being. So we're going to just pause on the debts, not renege, just pause until we can rebuild the country. So that's step number one. And the banks and China and everybody else can squeal all they want. I don't care. The next thing we do, once again, we revert the whole taxation system is two phases, as I said last time. A flat tax, get rid of all the regressive taxes, flat tax initially, and then a 2% expenditure tax after that.
What would the flat tax rate be, sorry?
Flat tax, 20% flat in the cities, 10% in the rural areas. So any major centre, capital city for example, 20% flat tax, that's it. 10% in rural. This provides real incentive for companies to get into town. Then we'll examine all the companies that are setting up businesses, because it's about SMEs, it's not about the majors. The major corporations they employ a lot of people, but they don't pay much tax. But it's all about SMEs. We want to build up the SMEs of this nation. Okay. And we can give tax breaks for long periods of time. For example, we want cheap power, no problem. We need more coal-fired power stations. We need gas turbines, not a problem. We'll give you a 30-year tax break just on that. Build the thing, because it takes 30 years to get your money back. It's a bugger. So 30-year tax breaks on power stations. Way you go. Build as much as you want, and you get cheap power, so we start to reduce the cost of manufacturing, because labour's more expensive, but our previous edge was cheap power and reliability and quality. Well, that was eroded under the new international economic order. And so you reduce tax on the individuals, you reduce tax on the companies, and you let them go. And then we start becoming self-reliant. This is that second line in our goal, self-reliant. So we need manufacturing in Australia. For example, we have found out, and this is not accidental, that most of our drugs come out of China. All of our manufacturing comes out of China. We send them coal and they send us back an iron ore and they send us back stuff. Well, we're going to turn that around. We're going to make it economically viable for Australians to grow businesses here from a national security perspective and from a national economic strength perspective. So we make Australia as self-reliant as we once were. And once the economy starts to grow, everything else takes place. We're making a bigger cake. So what I said about what we're going to do in Queensland, we're going to do nationally. This won't take 60 years. It only takes 60 years if you're putting money into somebody's Cayman Island account. And it's as blunt as that. Because the money is here. We should have $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund. We should be so rich as a nation. We can afford to help people that are in trouble. For example, one of the plans I mentioned previously, international aid, critical. What I think we should do is we get a couple of hospital ships. We build the ships. We man them with the cadets that are being trained up in Tasmania. We get nurses and doctors. They can repay their a portion of their HEX debt by service on these hospital ships. So wherever there's a disaster, we sail them in and we provide them real, immediate care, and it does us good, it does them good, it does everybody good. And so this self-reliance grows up. We don't pick winners. Government can't pick winners. All they do is pick a company that's going to fund them at the next election. No. That's the way we do it. We build the economy, we reduce tax, we increase certainty, and as a result of that, the economy will take off in record time. As I said before, the analysis has been done. If Roosevelt, after the Depression, had not interfered as much as he had, it would have been over quicker. And that's what we need. Because what we're looking at is a 60-year debt. And as you said, that's optimistic. That's ridiculous. This will be over in no time flat. And then we'll deal with our debts. Secondary to that, when we do look at China, I'll be explaining to them, I'm sorry, Xi Jinping, you criminal. Everything you've done, you've actually destroyed our country. Thank you very much. So we're going to hit you up and you're going to pay compensation to us. So the debt's wiped and we're going to come after you and all your billionaires that have been invading our country. Every Chinese billionaire must be a de facto linked to the Chinese Communist Party, because it's not like you can make your money in China on a fair basis. And so there's a lot of stuff that's got to be done to rip the cancer out of this country and let the country get back to work. We'll be over this in no time.
Yeah, but let's be clear, with the Chinese situation, of course, it's not an ethnic thing, and not at all. It's a fact. It would all be done through investigations, and we'd have to look through the individual cases. It's
of course, absolutely.
People. I'm watching you bloody media. I know what you're going to do with that clip. But
let them do that. But you know what? The cowardly media, they won't ask me, and that's fine.
They won't.
Because the media.
Yeah.
And don't cut this out of the show, please.
I won't.
And
no.
the media are also complicit in covering up the pedophiles, because every one of your heroic champions on the media, in particularly the ABC, not one has ever mentioned the 90-year suppression order. They are covering up and protecting pedophiles. And here's a question, folks. How many more children, babies, have to be raped and killed before you wake up? And it's as blunt as that. Because your politicians, your judiciary, your constabulary, your military, the church, the media, you pick them all. They are all playing the same game according to the same hymn sheet. And none of them want to talk about pedophiles, and nobody wants to talk about raping and murdering babies. And that's what's happening. So it's up to you folks. If you want your country back, you know what to do. You know what to do.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I mean, I think we covered everything. Like literally everything. Is there anything we missed this last week? I feel like a lot more happened.
It's been a big week, but it's hard to pick the single biggest issues.
Today, right now, actually, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll end up sitting around with Riccardo. We'll do a live stream or something. But in about 30 minutes, we're going to see the presidential debate between Mike Pence and the vice presidential debate, rather, between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. That is going to be fascinating, because on one side you've got, like, I'm not saying he's the Pope of America, but he's a very significant religious sort of, a lot of the religious community listen to Mike Pence because he's prim and proper and statesmanly in the US. So that'll be very fascinating. And he's a formidable debater, believe it or not. He's not a Trump, but he's a formidable debater on the facts. Kamala Harris, not so much. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes down. And it'll be fascinating to see, because this is probably one of the most important vice presidential debates ever. It's not because it's 2020, but it's because there's a very high likelihood that even if Joe Biden were to win, or something were to happen with him while he won, after he won the presidency, Kamala Harris has a very significant role to play, because she's the vice president next in line to the presidency, and there's a high likelihood she'd have a run again in 2024, even if she didn't win. And the same with Mike Pence. A lot of people are saying Pence would run in 2024 and win. I don't think so, but a lot of people are saying it. But it's a very consequential debate that's going to be happening. So it'll be very fascinating to see how it goes down. So look, I'm looking forward to watching that. But look, guys, it's been a crazy week. This year's been a crazy year, and I definitely understand that. As the year gets closer to November 4th or November 3rd in the US, it's a crescendo. It is a crescendo. The craziest things are happening. More news is happening in a week than would happen in the whole year for some countries. And watch this space. I'm trying to cover it as best as I can, but I said it on my Facebook last night, there's too much shit going on, and I can't keep track. I hope the noises in this podcast weren't too disruptive. We had a lot of people doing landscaping who decided to do it today. But thank you to, I think 90% of the sound got cancelled out thanks to our lovely donors who have been able to fund these mics and allow noise cancelling to come through them. So thank you to our donors. Next week I'll be taking some questions from our top donors who donate a certain level, and they've got some questions for Riccardo, and they're really interested to hear more about you. But yeah, look, we've got a very interesting week ahead. It'll be very interesting. If you like these conversations, please consider donating. It's the best way to ensure we meet our deadline at the end of the year for ensuring that this show continues into next year. But I really want to thank all the donors and all the people sharing. This podcast has already reached over 200,000 people since we first started the podcast only a month and a half ago. This is our 6th show. So look, a big thank you. That's a very good average sort of viewership per episode. I mean, there are some shows on the ABC, I don't know how they're still in business, but they don't get 40,000 views an episode. But yeah, Riccardo, did you have anything to add before we finish?
No, I just provide as much support as you can to Joel. He puts a lot of effort into this, a lot of effort. And if it weren't for Joel, we wouldn't be sitting here and we wouldn't be able to share this. So please, if you can, every $5, $10 counts. I know that's certainly the case for A1. Most of our donations are $5, $10, $20. And every dollar counts because it's coming out of our pockets, which is fine. We don't mind it. But please support Joel, subscribe, become a patron, and help the show continue, because this is very important stuff. No, I'm good. Thanks, mate. Looking forward to seeing you next week.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Riccardo.